You look at Andy Robertson's position, he's never onside. On field, this was given offside. It's not clearly and obviously wrong.
But from your professional opinion, do you think Robertson obviously commits an action that clearly impacts Donnarumma?
On balance, in my own opinion, I probably would have preferred a goal in this situation.
He went to challenge the ball, Dan Ballard, but he seemed to lead with his elbow.
I thought it was an outstanding piece of defending, Sam. He uses his arm for leverage, which is what you do. You do not jump with your arms by your side. There is a collision with Marino. I see that. He makes contact with Ballard as well with his arm under his ribs, but there is no elbow. It's his forearm that makes slight contact. If I am refereeing that game, put myself in that position, there is no way in the world I'm giving a penalty for that. Not a chance.
Hello and welcome to Men in Black. It is the podcast where we dive into all the big refereeing and VAR controversies from the top flight weekend in the Premier League. I'm Sam Matterface and I'm joined as always by the former Premier League referee. It is the super viral superstar Chris Foy. This weekend the Premier League scriptwriters clearly just discovered penalties and immediately got confused by them. So plenty to get stuck into. Right, we begin this week at the Etihad.
Corner from the right-hand side, headed in by Virgil van Dijk, but very belatedly, up goes the offside flag on the far side.
Andrew Robertson can't quite believe it.
It's right in front of the goalkeeper.
He ducks out the way. It will be checked by VAR because he gets out of the way. The goal will not stand.
Still Manchester City 1, Liverpool 0.
Afterwards I saw it took 14 seconds before the linesman raised his flag. For me, the wrong decision was made on the pitch and the wrong decision was made off the pitch by the VAR because Donnarumma could just see the ball. He could make the ultimate dive he wanted to make. No one was interfering. Our player wasn't moving towards the ball, so there was never a doubt for Donnarumma that he had to wait a little bit longer. He immediately dived when the ball lost Virgil's head.
Manchester City 3, Liverpool 0. Lots to unpick in this one. Let's start with Van Dijk's disallowed goal. I wonder if Chris would like to be back in the middle, unpicking this particular decision. 38 minutes in, Andy Robertson standing in an offside position, ducks out of the way. Van Dijk heads the ball in, bullet header. Gianluigi Donnarumma didn't quite get there. Now, it didn't look like Robertson was in Donnarumma's eye line, nor did he impede his dive. Mike Dean, good friend of ours, was on Sky saying that he thought that it was the correct decision in accordance with the interpretation of the law. So, Chris Foy, unpick this for me. Van Dijk, header, Robertson ducks. Was he in a position where he should have been flagged offside? What do you think?
Yeah, what a really interesting decision this was. I mean, you look at Andy Robertson's position. He's never onside. He's quite clearly in the 6-yard box or the goal area as we call it. And when Van Dijk heads the ball, momentarily Robertson is just stood in front of the goalkeeper Donnarumma, and then he quickly moves to the left, and then he moves forward. He stays within the confines of the goal area, and then when the ball comes towards him, he ducks, and the ball ends up in the back of the net. So what we have to understand here is that on field this was given offside by the assistant referee Stuart Burt. So he's happy with that because we're not talking about line of vision here. We're talking about an obvious action which impacts, the ability of the goalkeeper. So when that goal is disallowed, Michael Oliver, the VAR, has to find clear evidence to say that what the officials have done on field is clearly and obviously wrong. And in this situation, what you don't want to be doing is unpicking this decision because it's not clearly and obviously wrong.
Hold on. Sorry. The law states that it has to be an obvious action which clearly impacts the ability of an opponent to play the ball. Now, I've looked over this replay quite a few times. I don't think that it impacts at all. Is it because it's a subjective decision that Mike Oliver is reluctant to intervene? And if so, why doesn't he just bring over the referee to the monitor so that he can have a second view of it if he hasn't really seen it properly? And if there's no clear evidence to overturn it to suggest that there is not an obvious action to play the ball or is an obvious action to play the ball, then clearly it's not obvious.
The simple fact of the matter is, it is a very subjective decision and it is given on field and disallowed. So Michael Oliver has to have the clear evidence to recommend a review. I think realistically, when I look at it back, and I've looked at it a lot of times, Sam, I think on balance, I would have preferred a goal. But the VAR is not going to unpick this one because there's far too much to unpick in relation to this incident. So they stayed with the on-field decision.
Okay, but from your professional opinion, do you think Robertson obviously commits an action that clearly impacts Donnarumma?
Well, he's never onside. He's in the goal area. He's in between the goalposts. In the first instance, he stood in front of the goalkeeper, then he moves. When the ball is coming direct towards him, he ducks and the ball goes over him. And he actually, when he walks off and the decision's made, he points at himself and just accepts the decision. But as I said, on balance, in my own opinion, I probably would have preferred a goal in this situation.
Certainly Liverpool would have preferred a goal, and so would Arne Slot as well. I did notice, having watched it back, though, that Gianluigi Donnarumma immediately runs out and points at Robertson and is straight into the referee's ear about it. I didn't really think that there was any impact at all on Donnarumma's dive because he'd seen the ball all the way. And actually, I think this is one of those where you just let it go. Yeah, he's in an offside position, but he does get out of the way. I think Donnarumma, with his size, could get across there. Doesn't. It was just a great header. It probably should have been allowed. I'm not actually sure it would have changed the nature of the game, actually, because I thought Liverpool were quite poor in the match. But, you know, you never know what's going to happen once you're level pegging. So I can understand why Arne Slot is a little bit upset about that. Let's move on to another incident, the penalty award for Doku in the 9th minute. Mamardashvili was the person who made the foul, the goalkeeper. Doku, brilliant all afternoon. He gets away from Bradley and Konate. He rushes into the penalty area, goes past an out-rushing goalie in Mamardashvili, then goes over. Now, it does show on the replay that there was contact between the knee of Mamardashvili and Doku's left foot, and it tripped him, and he stumbles, he falls. The decision wasn't given on field. It was overturned by a VAR. The referee goes to the monitor and gives the penalty. I must admit, I thought this was the right decision because I think you saw a genuine attempt for Doku to stay on his feet. What was your interpretation of the decision?
I think you've called it spot on, Sam. Obviously, it wasn't given on field by Chris Kavanagh. But the goalkeeper comes flying out, doesn't he? And he catches him. Jeremy Doku tries to stay on his feet. I think when you see the images that the VAR looks at Michael Oliver and that, I think it's a clear foul. And I don't think there was too many dissenting voices with this one, and it was the right decision. But it just goes to show, you know, the player tried to stay on his feet, made a few paces, couldn't do it because of the contact. But, a good intervention from the referee. And when, obviously, Chris Kavanagh goes to the monitor and looks at it, he quite clearly sees the contact. And I think it's a good decision.
Some people will say that there's not enough contact for him to go down in that manner. And there will be other penalty decisions that we'll discuss today, looking forward to this, where there is a similar amount of contact and penalties were not given. So why was this enough contact? Why was this contact sufficient to be deemed as a foul?
Well, Jeremy Doku's travelling at pace, isn't he? And the goalkeeper comes out, and sometimes you only need minimal contact, and we'll see that from time to time. But I just don't have a problem with this. I think it's a clear penalty. Chris Kavanagh will look at it back and think, why didn't he see it in real time, which he didn't. But when you look at the images, Sam, he's tried to stay on his feet, Doku, and down he goes. But for me, a really good intervention and the correct outcome.
Chris Kavanagh wasn't 100% sure, though, was it? It took him a long time to go through all of the replays and look at the incident. Did you get the sense that he wasn't fully convinced with the intervention? Was it clear? Was it obvious?
Well, I think sometimes you've got to make sure, because there was two bits to it, wasn't there? There was a small contact, then there was a bigger contact. So he's got to look at the both. And I think when you look at it in real time, I think it's the second one that takes him to ground. So I don't think we should be too critical when referees get, the right call, and we shouldn't be critical of the VAR, because without the VAR, a penalty wouldn't have been given. So the right call for me.
So we're going for two correct calls in this game, possibly, although you would have given a slightly different decision on field for the Van Dijk goal. But you reckon that the Doku penalty was absolutely fine. OK, so that's Manchester City, Liverpool. Let's move on to Brentford, Newcastle. Oh, there's some tasty ones in that one. So Brentford 3, Newcastle United 1. Stuart Atwell's the referee, Paul Tierney is the VAR. Now, Dan Burn and Dongo Watara got very well acquainted in this game. Incident number 1, 62 minutes on the clock. Watara goes down inside the box following a challenge from Dan Burn. Basically, the forward's shown a yellow card for simulation here by Stuart Atwell. The VAR then reviewed the incident, and stuck with Atwell's decision of no penalty, despite the fact that there was clear contact from Burn. Now, the referee's call of no penalty and yellow card was backed up by the VAR, checked and confirmed, with a challenge from Burn on Watara deemed to be minimal contact. Bearing in mind that Jeremy Doku went over with a similar sort of amount of contact, what's the difference between the two incidents, and why was this not given as a penalty after review?
Okay, well, we'll go back to Doku. That is a clear penalty. So on this situation, what's happened is that the challenge by Dan Burn, if the referee to give a penalty, that would have been check complete and they would have stayed with that decision. I think what Stuart Atwell has done here, he's seen the contact and then he's seen the overreaction. He's seen that overreaction of the player who's gone to ground, throwing himself in the air to really make sure that the referee gives a penalty. And it's a complete overreaction in this situation. My personal view on this, Sam, is if the referee gives a penalty, I've got no problem with it. But when you see him caution for simulation and there's contact, my preferred outcome here, I always think there's a third way with these. I really do. I think that if the referee doesn't give a penalty and doesn't caution for simulation and lets play continue, I'm comfortable with that. But I think Stuart Atwell's seen the contact, but he also sees the complete overreaction. The contact and the way the player went to ground don't really correlate. We talk about not penalising minimal contact, but there is contact on the boot. And as I said at the beginning, if he gives a penalty, it's check complete. He doesn't give a penalty, he cautions, again, it's check complete. But there always is this third way. And I think sometimes it's better to play on. And in this situation, if we'd have played on, I don't think we would have had too many complaints. But it's one that's going to, divide opinion.
Well, do you know what? I've got to say, I think Stuart Atwell on this occasion was absolutely spot on. And my reason for that is, and I know it's subjective and you're right, will divide opinion. But when you look at Jeremy Doku going into the penalty area, he has a genuine attempt to stay on his feet and get a shot away after the contact has been made with Marmadashvili. If you compare that to this incident, Dongo Watara feels the tiniest bit of contact from Dan Burn and jumps into the air, tries to kick his heels behind himself and touch his backside with his heels. And the truth is that the action that Dan Burn committed does not generate that level of movement. It doesn't. You don't jump up in the air if someone stands on the top of your feet with both feet. It doesn't happen. So that is an attempt, in my opinion, to deceive. Therefore, the referee is within his rights to say, no, you tried to deceive me here. You're going to get a yellow card for simulation. And I think it's an absolutely spot-on decision. Right, let's move on to the second incident, which was the penalty that was awarded on Dongo Watara. I did not agree with Stuart Atwell here because I cannot see any contact. Dan Burn didn't complain, so I thought to myself there must have been some issue here. But every time I look at it back on the monitor, when Watara reaches for the ball on the edge of the penalty area as the ball's played over the top, I can't see Dan Burn making contact. Can you explain it to me?
Yeah, I can. I'm going to disagree with you because I have to on this one for the simple reason. Dan Burn gets a tar on the hip with the inside of his leg, and it's a penalty. It has to be a penalty. And I think the proof of the pudding with this one was that Dan Burn just stood there and gave himself up. He knows it himself. He's caught the player and down he goes, and he was resigned to the fact that he conceded a penalty. I've got no problem with this. I mean, what we want from our referees is for them to go out and make solid decision making. Stuart Atwell gets himself in a great position for this one. You were very complimentary about the first one. I have no problem with it. I'm pretty sure if Dan Burn didn't think it was a penalty, he would have told the referee. But he gave himself up and he just trudged off, didn't he, once he got the second yellow card. So for me, that's a penalty.
I thought it was less of a penalty incident than the first one was. I thought there would be less discussion about this. I thought this would be cut and dry. The VAR would just overturn it and that would be it. But I mean, is it because he's running at speed and there's contact and therefore then he goes down? I honestly couldn't see enough contact to give a penalty.
Do you know what, Sam? I think it's where the contact was. I think he gets in with the inside of his leg at the top of his thigh, and it was sort of an unorthodox challenge. It's not like he tripped him from behind or slid in as a challenge. He's got him really high, but virtually at hip height. And when Dango goes to ground and the referee gives a decision, which was the penalty. It's very difficult for the VAR to intervene when he's in a right position and makes the right call. And as I said, Dan Burns stands there and he's just give himself up because he knows he's actually caught him. So there can be no complaints about that.
Okay, let's move on because we've got another big incident involving a North East club coming up next. Sunderland 2, Arsenal 2. Craig Pawson was the referee. The VAR was James Bell. The incident happened in the first 7 minutes of this game. Dan Ballard and Mikel Merino go up for a header after a cross from the left-hand side. He went to challenge the ball, Dan Ballard, but he seemed to lead with his elbow. Now, we've had lots of questions about this. I'll read out one of the text messages that we got. Can the panel on Men in Black ask how Dan Ballard isn't penalised for elbowing Mikel Merino in the face in the box? If that action was on the ground with legs, it's a stonewall penalty. Yet elbowing someone in the face before a header is seen as less problematic. Commentators on TV kept talking about intent, endangering the safety of an opponent. Surely that doesn't factor in. What was your assessment of it?
I thought it was an outstanding piece of defending, Sam. I just see the ball in the air. I see Ballard jump. Don't look at me like that because I've got to explain this. I see Ballard jump. You play football on a Wednesday, I know that. And when he jumps in a natural manner. He uses his arm for leverage, which is what you do. You do not jump with your arms by your side. There is a collision with Merino. I see that. He makes contact with Ballard as well with his arm under his ribs, but there is no elbow. Yes, there's a bit of contact, but how do we want our football to be played? He's jumping to head the ball, and there's a bit of contact. Because the player stays down on the floor and requires a bit of treatment, everybody jumps on it. It's good defending. It's solid defending. He heads the ball, uses his arm for leverage. If I am refereeing that game, put myself in that position, there is no way in the world I'm giving a penalty for that. Not a chance.
So this bit is okay. The fact
he
that he goes
didn't do
up
that,
like that.
Sam, he didn't.
He goes
do
up
that.
like that.
No, he jumps for leverage.
The angled elbow.
No, Sam. No. Stop. No. Stop provoking me. You put me over the edge with this. He doesn't swing an elbow. He doesn't have a clenched fist. He jumps for leverage, and it's his forearm that makes slight contact. Well,
And is that okay? Is he not endangering the safety of an opponent by doing that?
Who makes contact with who here? Merino jumps into him and his arm is out because he's jumping. He doesn't get as high and he catches him in the ribs under his arm. I mean, how do you want your football to be played? Are we making this a non-contact sport now? This is absolute solid defending and a really good header using his arm for leverage. It's not a reckless act. It's not a careless act. He's focusing on the ball. And that's where we should be, and it's not a foul. I'm not having it, no.
Okay, I imagine that Chris Foy is going to get a lot of new Arsenal social media friends over the course of the next week or so.
Thanks for that, Sam.
The Arsenal fans are absolutely up in arms because they feel as if there is some sort of conspiracy against them. I mean, they're constantly on to me, asking me about decisions, and I think they feel a little bit hard done to. And I think we've analysed some of the decisions which maybe have gone against them already this season. And I think they definitely felt as if that one did. Mikel Arteta did. He stood in the dugout and he was doing the elbow sign as well. There was another incident right at the end of the game when the goal from Brobby was scored in the 4th minute of stoppage time. He was able to get to the ball before the onrushing David Raya. He hit an acrobatic effort into the back of the net. Gabriel, the Arsenal defender, felt that he was fouled by Brobby before the goal went in because Brobby's foot, was too high and connecting with his head before the goal happened. What was your view on that?
Yeah, I think this is a good goal. Makes clear contact with the ball. I don't think there was too many dissenting voices with this. Obviously, there'll be a lot of noise around it because it was an equaliser to the last knock-ins of the game, shall we say. Clearly makes contact on the ball. I think it's a good goal in my opinion.
Was Brobby not lucky not to be penalised for potentially a lack of attention or consideration for the opponent?
No, not at all. I think it's Gabriel who puts himself in a bit of danger. He dives in really, really low to block the shot, but there's clear contact on the ball from Brobby. I think it's a good goal, that one.
Okay, let's move on to Crystal Palace against Brighton. Crystal Palace 0, Brighton 0. Referee Tim Robinson, VAR Paul Howard. Penalty overturned. JD Convo on Ruter. This is in the 62nd minute. Ruter held off Tyreek Mitchell, cut in from the wing, danced into the box, took a little time to go to ground after he found himself in the box. Multiple Palace shirts were around him, but JD Convo appeared to be the culprit when the penalty was given. I think right from the very off, though, we thought that this was a little bit spurious. VAR found on review that Ruter initiated contact. The penalty was overturned. After review, the referee did decide that there was no penalty to Brighton Hove Albion, and it was absolutely the right decision, wasn't it, Chris?
It was an excellent intervention by Paul Howard, the VAR, but a poor decision on field from the referee, Tim Robinson, who's in the wrong position. There are a number of players in the penalty area, but the player going to ground gives himself away by his action. And what he did was, Sam, he split his legs, and he's the person who initiates the contact on the defender. And if the referee'd have moved a little bit more to the right and get an angle so he's actually looking behind where the player's running, he would have seen that, but he didn't, and he points to the spot. Thankfully, Paul Howard, who's in the VAR chair on the day, has a look at that and intervenes really, really well. And I think it was an excellent intervention and obviously the right decision, because, you know, without VAR in this situation, that becomes a major talking point, doesn't it?
Absolutely, because it definitely wasn't a penalty. So will Tim Robinson go back, look at those replays and try and work out how he can improve going forward when he's in a situation when there are multiple players in front of him in a congested penalty area?
Absolutely. What you've got to try and do is work your angles. And in this case, it would have been just shifting a little bit right. So you'd be actually behind the attacker and you can see which way he's running. Because when I said when he goes to ground, it's the way he splits his legs. He's the one who's drawing contact. He's actually kicking a defender. But as I said, you know, fair play to Paul Howard, the VAR, who intervened superbly on this one. And we got the right outcome in the end.
Okay, Chris always tells us we're in a great place with handball in the Premier League. Let's find out if we are. Aston Villa 4, Bournemouth 0. The referee here is John Brooks at Villa Park. The VAR is Peter Banks. Now, the Cherries are awarded a penalty in the 65th minute, which they go on to miss through Anton Semenyo, as Evan Nilsson heads back a corner, a cross goal, and onto the arm of Morgan Rogers. Now, the distance between the two is very, very short. Not much reaction time for Morgan Rogers, whose arm is up high. Now, as we all know, Chris thinks we're in a great place with handball in the Premier League. But how on earth is Rogers supposed to get out of that situation, Chris?
You don't think this is handball, Sam?
I'm asking the question.
I'm astounded. I am absolutely astounded. Let me tell you.
I do think it's handball. And I think it's handball because he puts his arm up high above his shoulder. I think you run the risk in that situation.
Absolutely. And you're learning every week. And if you'd have been refereeing this game, I'm pretty confident that on field, you, like John Brooks, would have given a penalty. When you look at where Morgan Rogers' hand is, it is actually above his shoulder. It's high up there. The only people who are going to have their hands up there are goalkeepers. When it strikes him, he's a couple of metres away. I don't think there's a referee on the Premier League. I don't think there's a referee on the EFL. I don't think there's a referee in grassroots football that wouldn't give a penalty for that. That is a clear penalty, and I just wish that all handball offences were as easy to detect as that one.
Yeah, I think the problem people have got is that it's happening at speed and it is a short proximity. But I think what the law states and what the advice and guidance suggests is that the proximity is taken into consideration when there is, I know, it's so close that you can't get out of the way and your arms are maybe by your side, maybe a little bit away, or it's in a natural action of turning or something like that. But if you're up high and your arm is above your shoulder, the question the referee will ask is, why on earth would you ever have your arm up there in the first place? And therefore, if it strikes it, you run the risk of giving away a foul or a penalty.
Correct. And you know, we shouldn't be critical of the referee in this situation. It was given on field and a quick VAR check. I think it was Peter Banks for this one. Penalty. Can't have too many complaints. And I think if you went to Morgan Rogers today and said, have a look at this, I think he would agree that, yeah, it's a penalty.
Okay, let's move on. Nottingham Forest 3, Leeds United 1. I'm going to cause a little bit of controversy with you here again, Chris, because this decision really irked me yesterday. I couldn't believe it. I was actually a bit gobsmacked, to be honest with you. Jack Harrison is adjudged to have made a foul on Amari Hutchinson. Now, I was told yesterday it was because Amari Hutchinson puts himself in between the ball and man. He does a good job of getting the wrong side. Well, what's that got to do with anything if there's no real contact? And actually, the contact is instigated by Amari Hutchinson. He gets the ball first in the battle with Jack Harrison, and then, well, it says there that the Leeds man clipped his heels. I've watched it back. Actually, what happens is Amari Hutchinson clicks his own heels and goes to ground. I don't understand how the penalty is not overturned here.
Sam, you're worrying me at the minute.
Why?
When you messaged me yesterday and you said you didn't think this was a penalty, I made a point of having a good look at it. And I'm going to give a load of credit here to Jared Gillett, the referee, because what happened was Jack Harrison, when he's running, the outside of his leg makes contact with the outside of Amari Hutchinson's leg. It causes him to clip his own heels. I have to tell you, Sam, this is a stonewall penalty. It can't be anything else. I thought I was doing a brilliant, over the last few weeks, I thought I was doing a brilliant job with you over your detection of penalties, and you don't think this is a penalty? I'm astounded.
I don't think it's a penalty, and I'll tell you why. Because Amari Hutchinson goes down because he clicks his own heels.
No,
now, you're
but
saying
the reason
that it's
he clicks
Harrison's
his own...
fault that he does that.
Sam, listen. The reason he clicks his own heels is because, honest to God, Jack Harrison catches him with the outside of his leg, which makes Amari Hutchinson kick his own leg. There's clear contact. It's a penalty. The referee's in a perfect position.
Well, there's clearly no intent here from Harrison.
There's no
to commit a
intent in the
foul.
law. He tripped him.
Hutchinson's coming in across his body because he wants to try and generate contact. He even steps across him and puts his left leg in between the legs of Harrison as he goes over.
You are a lone voice with this. You are a lone voice. Let me tell you, I was really concerned when you messaged me. I thought, I've got to look at this. And I looked twice and went, I am concerned now. Sam doesn't think this is a penalty. This is an absolute stonewall.
Sam was fed up about the sheer number of penalties and decisions yesterday that were blowing his brain, and this is just the latest in a long line of them. That's why. Okay, so maybe I'm wrong on this situation. I stand to be corrected by the authority that is Chris Foy, but I will imagine that I'm not a lone voice in this.
Never the case.
I thought it was soft. Let's crack on. West Ham against Burnley. The referee is Michael Salisbury. The VAR is Neil Davis. Hannibal whips in a ball which looked like a simple catch for Alphonse Areola. However, the goalkeeper proceeded to fumble the ball, which allowed Cullen to step in. Some say Areola was fouled as the goalkeeper had control of the ball when Cullen scored. The referee's call of goal was checked by VAR, with it deemed that Areola was not in control of the ball before Cullen scored. What factors are taken into account when deciding whether a goalkeeper is in possession of the football or not? And what did you make of this decision?
Okay, well, I was comfortable with the decision of goal. I think when you talk about goalkeepers being in control, it's when you've got your hand on the ball between the surface, or you're actually holding the ball, or you're bouncing the ball, or the ball is actually on your hand. At no point in the proceedings here was the goalkeeper in possession of the ball. It had just gone away from him. We know it's checked by the VAR. I made a point of looking at this one again from behind the goal, and you can quite clearly see that the goalkeeper's not in possession of the ball. So goal on field was given. There's no reason to turn that over because it's not a clear and obvious error. No foul.
Are goalkeepers too protected in general by referees, do you think?
No, I mean, that's a shout that's levied at referees, but I think sometimes when a goalkeeper's jumping and they're catching the ball, they're very vulnerable, and if somebody comes in and gets underneath them, I think we saw an accidental collision yesterday, didn't we, with Nick Pope down at Brentford? I think it was his own player, and you can see that when you're actually got your arms in the air and you're catching a ball, you are vulnerable. And excuse me, sometimes if you're an attacker and you jump and you put your hand or arm in the face of a goalkeeper, you're going to get a foul. But in this one, he wasn't in control of the ball, so goal given on field, quite rightly checked quickly, and the right decision.
Okay, listen, Chris, thank you very much. It was good to go through all those incidents and to finally sort of unpick some of the reasons behind them. Good that we really agreed with almost everything with each other, sort of. And I'm pleased that my learnings are improving sort of. Me and Amari Hutchinson are going down the pub for a pint now. It's international break. Thank you very much. I'll see you later on. If you want to watch back some of the other episodes of Men in Black, then you can go on the Premier League All Access feed, which is available on the talkSPORT YouTube channel. You can go through some of the old podcasts as well. It's on the Premier League All Access feed, wherever you get your podcasts. It's also on the talkSPORT app as well. That's Men in Black with Chris Foy and me, Sam Matterface. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.